At the end of my company's year-end party, I came home still holding the small gift bag they handed out at the door. I barely had time to take off my heels when I saw my son collapsed in front of our entryway. His small body curled in on itself like he'd been trying to protect something. Before I could even reach him, my brother stepped out from the hallway, leaning against the wall with a smug, lazy shrug. Just disciplined him. My parents appeared behind him, their faces cold and strangely calm. He deserved it, my mother said, as if announcing a weather forecast. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I called for help, praying someone would arrive fast enough, but when the medic walked through the door and saw my brother, he froze, then turned to me and whispered, "Ma'am, is that really your brother? Because actually, there are moments in life when everything you believe about your family suddenly feels like a story someone else wrote." That night, standing on the threshold of my own home, staring at my unconscious son and the people who were supposed to love him, I felt something inside me shift in a way that couldn't be undone. My son's small body lay still, one arm angled at an unnatural position, his breath shallow. The lights from the living room cast a thin, pale glow across his face, revealing bruises blooming along his cheek. I dropped to my knees beside him, whispering his name over and over, hoping he would open his eyes just enough to prove he was still with me. My brother, Owen, didn't move from where he leaned. He crossed his arms and watched me with a look that wasn't anger, wasn't regret, but something colder, something I hadn't seen since we were children. "You're too soft on him, Marissa. Someone has to teach him respect." Respect. The word sounded like an insult coming from him. When we were young, Owen never had to respect anything. Not boundaries. Not rules. Not other people. Our parents always excused it as energy, or ambition, or the confidence of a future leader. But that confidence had curdled into something darker long before tonight. My parents hovered near the hallway, whispering to each other in disapproving tones. My father shook his head at the sight of me, panic-stricken on the floor. "If you didn't spoil him so much, this wouldn't be necessary," my mother added softly. "Children need discipline. You should be grateful your brother steps in." Grateful. The word felt like a slap. I looked up at them, unable to speak for a moment, because I couldn't recognize the people standing above me. These were the same parents who held my son as a newborn, who kissed his forehead in the hospital, who cried when he took his first steps. Suddenly they were strangers. The medic's arrival shook the silence. He knelt beside my son, checking his pulse and his bruises. But then his eyes lifted to Owen. A brief flash of shock crossed his face. He looked from Owen to me, almost afraid to speak. "Can I ask, is that man your brother?" The question cut through me like ice. "Yes," I said, though the word felt wrong. The medic swallowed hard. He turned back to my son, voice barely above a whisper. Because actually, he didn't finish the sentence, but the dread in his eyes said enough. Something was very wrong. Thank you for listening to this beginning. If the story is resonating with you so far, a like or subscribe truly helps me continue sharing more. And if you have any thoughts or reactions, I always appreciate reading your comments. The medic didn't have to finish his sentence. The way his voice trailed off, the way his eyes avoided mine, the way his gloved hands hovered with hesitation, told me he knew something about my brother that I didn't. Or worse, something I never allowed myself to consider. He focused again on my son, gently lifting his arm, checking for fractures, My son whimpered in his unconscious state. A soft, pained sound that felt like it pierced straight through my ribs. "I'm going to need to take him in right away," the medic said. His tone steady but urgent. He looked at me again. "More serious this time. And you need to come with him. Alone." The word hung in the air. My mother bristled. "That's unnecessary. We're his grandparents." The medic stood up, towering enough to make her step back slightly. "Ma'am, I'm advising her to go alone for medical reasons." His emphasis wasn't subtle. My parents stiffened, offended but silent. Owen, however, smirked, always dramatic. "Aren't you?" "Marissa," acting like he's dying. I turned toward him slowly. "What did you do to him?" Owen shrugged. Like this was all beneath him. "Like your son isn't a spoiled little brat who finally got told no." My jaw clenched. "He is 6 years old. You put your hands on a 6-year-old. Owen rolled his eyes. "Someone had to." The medic cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I would like to get him to the ambulance now. Can you carry him?" "Or shall I?" He began lifting my son carefully, supporting his neck. My parents watched without a shred of guilt, without a hint of urgency. My father muttered, "Kids exaggerate pain all the time." My mother added, "Owen told us what happened. He only corrected him because he talked back." Talked back. The phrase echoed through my head. My son had always been gentle, thoughtful, shy. If he talked back, something must have terrified him first. Yet the people I trusted considered that a reason for violence. We moved toward the door. As I walked past Owen, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "You're going to make a scene, aren't you? You always did love attention." The laugh that followed was quiet and cruel. Outside, cold night air hit my face. The medic helped settle my son into the ambulance. When the doors closed behind us and the engine started, the world suddenly felt quieter. The medic glanced at me again, his expression hesitant. "I need to tell you something before we reach the hospital." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" he exhaled. "I recognized your brother. At first I wasn't sure, but now I am. And you need to know what that means." I blinked. "Recognized him from where?" The medic hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "There have been prior reports, complaints, incidents involving him." My breath caught. Incidents involving what? His eyes softened with something like pity. Violence. A chill ran through me. "Against who?" He lowered his voice. "Against minors." For a moment, everything inside me went still. Not empty, not numb, just still. Like my mind needed a moment to understand the shape of the truth forming in front of me. My brother. The man my parents defended. The man who hurt my son. The man they insisted I should be grateful for had a history. The medic saw the shock on my face. "I'm telling you this because if the hospital asks questions, and they will, you need to be prepared. Your brother isn't just a family problem." He paused, letting the weight settle. "He's a known danger." The ambulance lights cast red flashes across my hands as I sat there, absorbing what the medic had just told me. A known danger. The phrase rattled around inside my chest like something sharp. I kept glancing at my son, watching his small fingers twitch with every bump in the road. Terrified, each movement meant new pain. I brushed his hair back slowly, gently, wondering how long he had been scared before he collapsed. Wondering how long he had been trying to protect himself from someone who should have been protecting him. When we reached the hospital, Nurses rushed us into a bright exam room. They moved quickly. Practiced. Calm, in a way that made me trust them instantly. One took notes, while another checked my son's breathing, lifting his shirt to reveal more bruising along his ribs. Some were fresh. Some looked older. My throat tightened at the sight. Older. Meaning, this wasn't the first time. I felt the room tilt slightly. Had something happened before without me seeing it? Did he say something? Did I miss something? The nurse noticed the look on my face. "We'll take good care of him," she said softly. "But I need to ask you some difficult questions." My stomach dropped. "Yes. Of course." She began with the basics. Her voice steady. "Has he had any recent injuries? Has anyone other than you cared for him? Have you noticed changes in behavior? Sleeping patterns? Appetite?" Each question felt heavier than the last. I answered carefully. Truthfully. "Yes. My parents sometimes watched him." "Yes. My brother was around him tonight." "Yes. He had seemed quieter lately." "Yes. He seemed more cautious around adults." The nurse exchanged a glance with the attending physician, who nodded without surprise. They both stepped out briefly. I heard murmurs in the hallway. Then another nurse entered with a clipboard. "We need consent for imaging. X-rays. Possibly more. Depending on what we find." My hands shook as I signed. When they wheeled my son down the hall for scans, I followed until they asked me to wait in a small room nearby. The door closed behind me, leaving me in a quiet I didn't want. I sat there staring at the floor tiles, replaying every moment from the moment I walked into my house. My parents' cold expressions, Owen's smirk, my son's body on the floor, the medic's whispered warning. A knock pulled me from my thoughts. A police officer stepped inside, notepad in hand. "Miss Hale, I need to ask you a few questions about what happened tonight." I nodded. Already exhausted, but determined to give every detail I could. He listened carefully, never interrupting, his pen moving steadily across the page. When I finished, he sighed and said, "You did the right thing calling for help. We take cases like this very seriously." Before I could ask what would happen next, the door opened again. The physician returned, holding a chart and wearing an expression that made my heart drop. "We found several injuries that need to be addressed immediately," he said. "Some are consistent with impact trauma. Some appear older." The room went silent. Older. The word echoed again. The physician softened his tone. "Your son will need time to recover. Physically and emotionally." I swallowed a shaky breath. "Will he be okay?" The doctor nodded slowly. "Yes, but this isn't something we can ignore." As he left, the officer looked at me with a grave seriousness. "Ms. Hale, we need to discuss protective measures for your son. And we also need to talk about your brother." He paused to let the words settle. "Because this isn't just a medical case now. It's criminal." The word criminal hung in the room long after the officer finished speaking. It lingered in the air like dust in a sunbeam. Impossible to ignore once you finally see it. I rubbed my palms together, trying to ground myself. But my fingers felt numb. I had come home expecting a quiet night after a long work event. Instead, I was sitting in a hospital consultation room, learning that my brother, the man my parents defended without hesitation, had become a threat to my child. The officer sat across from me, posture straight but expression gentle. "I know this is overwhelming," he said, "but we need to make sure your son is protected. That starts with understanding what led to tonight." He asked more questions. Had Owen ever acted aggressively before? Did anyone else in the family discipline my son? Did I ever witness Owen losing his temper? I answered each as honestly as I could. But each answer painted the same picture. Owen had always been temperamental. My parents had always excused it. And I had never thought he would turn that anger toward a child. When the officer stepped out to make a call, I finally had a moment alone. I looked through the small window in the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of my son. A nurse passed by and paused when she saw me. "They're finishing the last scan," she said. "He's in good hands." I nodded, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. A moment later, the medic who brought us in appeared at the end of the hallway. His expression was serious but not unfriendly. He approached slowly, as if giving me time to prepare. "I want to check on your son," he said. "And on you." His voice held a quiet empathy that made my eyes sting unexpectedly. I thanked him, though my voice cracked halfway through. He took a breath. "There's something you need to understand. When I recognized your brother tonight, it wasn't by coincidence. Reports involving him have crossed through emergency services more than once." I stared at him, waiting for the worst. He continued, lower this time. "The cases involved physical aggression, and they involved minors." My knees weakened, and I had to grip the edge of the chair to steady myself. How did my parents not know, or did they know, and refuse to accept it? The medic watched my reaction carefully. "I'm sorry to bring this to you like this," he said quietly, "but you deserve to know." A nurse stepped in. "Miss Hale, your son is being moved to a room for observation. You can see him now." Relief flooded me. I followed her to the room where my son lay wrapped in a hospital blanket. Eyes half open, breathing softly. I brushed his hair back, whispering his name. His fingers curled around mine. That tiny gesture broke something inside me. A small, fragile piece I didn't know I was still holding together. The doctor soon returned with the scan results. "Your son has several bruises, a sprained wrist, and possible rib inflammation. But he will recover." He looked at me firmly. "What's crucial now is preventing this from happening again." The officer re-entered the room behind him. "Ms. Hale, based on the medical findings and the medic's statement, we are recommending immediate protective action. You will need to keep your son away from your brother and possibly your parents while we investigate." My heartbeat quickened. "My parents, too, they defended him tonight," the officer said gently. "We need to consider their judgment as part of the situation." I looked down at my son's small hand holding mine. Warm, trusting, depending on me. In that moment, clarity settled like a steady flame. I would do whatever it took to protect him, even if it meant standing alone. The next morning came slowly, the kind of slow where every minute feels stretched thin. My son slept peacefully in the hospital bed, his breathing steady. His small hand wrapped around the stuffed bear a nurse had brought him. Seeing him resting helped. But the weight of everything else pressed down on my shoulders, heavier with each passing hour. A social worker arrived first. Her name was Elena, and she took a quiet seat beside me. "I've reviewed the reports," she said calmly. "There are enough red flags here to open a case." I nodded, my palms damp. She continued, "We're not here to blame you, Marissa. We're here to make sure your son is safe going forward." It was meant to be reassuring, but it only reminded me of the night before. The bruises, the fear, the medic's warning, my family's coldness, and the truth that had been steadily forming. Safety wasn't just something I had to hope for anymore. It was something I had to fight for. After Elena left, The police officer from the night before returned. He had several forms in hand. "We need to talk about a restraining order against your brother," he said. "It will prevent him from approaching you or your son." My stomach twisted. The idea of formally separating myself from Owen felt surreal. But the memory of my son lying on the floor drowned out any hesitation. I signed everything he placed in front of me. The officer paused before leaving. "There's something else," he said. "We interviewed your neighbors. Several of them said they heard yelling earlier that evening. One mentioned seeing your parents dragging your son inside after he tried to run out." My breath caught. "Dragging," he nodded. "We are investigating their involvement as well." The world felt quieter for a moment. Not safer, just quieter. Understanding set in slowly. This wasn't just about Owen. My parents had played a part. They hadn't stepped in to protect my son. They had enabled the person who hurt him. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. My parents. Over and over. Then Owen. The call log filled with their names like a warning. I didn't answer. I couldn't hear their excuses. Not now. The officer had advised me not to speak to them anyway. Around evening, the doctor returned one more time. He sat on the edge of the chair and spoke gently. "Your son is stable," he said. "We're keeping him overnight just to be safe. You did the right thing bringing him in." I nodded, too tired to speak. When he left, I stepped into the hallway for a moment to breathe. The medic from the night before was there, signing a chart at the nurse's station. He looked up and offered a small nod. "How is he?" asked. "Better," I said. "Thanks to you." His expression softened. "Good." He hesitated before adding, "I meant what I said. People like your brother don't stop unless someone draws a line." Someone. That someone was me. I returned to my son's room. The sight of him sleeping, his chest rising and falling softly, gave me a kind of strength I hadn't felt before. A quiet strength. A steady strength. For years, I had let my family's opinions shape too much of my life. I had excused their behavior, looked past their flaws, convinced myself that loyalty meant acceptance. But loyalty to the wrong people can cost you everything. Protecting my son wasn't betrayal. It was a beginning. Tomorrow, I would take the next steps, and none of them would include Owen or my parents. By the next morning, a gentle winter light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting long, soft lines across the floor. My son woke slowly, blinking up at me with confusion that melted into relief the moment he recognized my face. I leaned down and kissed his forehead, whispering that he was safe now. His small arms reached up and wrapped around my neck with surprising strength. That single moment told me everything. He trusted me. He still felt protected in my presence, and I would not break that trust again. The doctor came in shortly after. "He's well enough to go home today," he said, "but you'll need to follow the care instructions carefully." I nodded and listened closely, memorizing every detail. By the time he finished, the police officer and Elena, the social worker, had returned to speak with me privately in a small consultation room. "We've filed the emergency protective order," the officer confirmed. "Your brother will be legally barred from contacting you or your son. If he tries, call us immediately," Elena added. "And given the details we've documented, Child Protective Services will be reviewing your parents' involvement as well. You made the right decision coming forward." For once, I didn't feel fear at those words. I felt clarity. My parents had always told me that families stick together, no matter what. But that version of loyalty had only ever protected Owen. It had never protected me. And last night, it didn't protect my son. Blood may connect you to someone, but it doesn't guarantee the bond is safe or healthy. Sometimes, family love becomes something you must step away from before it destroys more than you can repair. The officer offered to escort me home, but I declined. I needed to walk back into my house on my own terms. When my son and I arrived, the air inside felt different, still the same walls, the same rooms, the same familiar furniture. But the weight of silence had shifted. I carried him to his room and helped him settle under the covers. His eyes were already growing heavy again. I sat with him until his breathing softened into sleep. Then I walked down the hallway toward the living room. A part of me expected Owen to be standing there, or my parents waiting with excuses ready. But the house was empty. The quiet felt like the first deep breath I had taken in years. On the kitchen counter lay a note from my mother. No apology. No concern. Just a single sentence. We need to talk. I folded the note and placed it in a drawer. Not everything deserves a response. Not everyone deserves another chance. That evening, I sat on the couch next to my sleeping son and watched the slow rise and fall of his chest. The world outside grew dim, but the room around us felt warm, steady, grounded. I had spent my life fearing conflict with my family. Now I understood that protecting my child from them wasn't conflict. It was love. I didn't know what the coming weeks would look like. Legal steps, investigations, difficult conversations. But for the first time, I felt ready. I felt strong enough to carry both of us forward. Because the moment I chose my son over the family I came from, I finally became the mother he deserved. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you found meaning in it, a like or subscribe truly helps me continue sharing more. And if you'd like to share your thoughts or reactions, I always appreciate reading your comments.